everybody? This is your girl CC with Where It Begins Magazine, and I got my co-host Theo on the line. How are you today, Theo?
I'm good, CC. What about you?
I'm good. It's Wednesday, Hump Day
Hey,
Wednesday. I love Wednesday.
man, hey, listen. Another Wednesday, another round of dope interviews, another chance to see you on YouTube with your smiling face. So definitely, let's go ahead and get it.
Okay. Well, we have a special guest on the line with us today. I want him to introduce himself of who he is and what he does.
Hello, my name is Aaron Phillip Clark, and I am a crime fiction author and screenwriter.
Awesome. Well, what made you want to be an author?
Well, I always had a passion for storytelling, and so I remember probably about 8 years old, I started borrowing books from my dad's library and really just enjoyed crime fiction and enjoyed thrillers and mysteries, and that's kind of what kicked it off. And then later, I like comic books and things like that. And so over time, I think that just evolved, and I ended up focusing on screenwriting for my undergrad, and then got my master's in fiction.
Okay, congratulations. Well, I'm so excited to talk about your new book. So let's go into the details. Let's talk about your book and the motivation behind it.
Sure. So the book is it's a crime thriller set in 2014, a couple of months after the murder of Eric Garner by the NYPD, and it is loosely inspired. I say loosely by my time as a recruit in the LAPD Academy. And so it centers on Trevor Finnegan, who is a rookie detective and is tasked to investigate the murder of a young Black recruit at a time where the city is going through some changes in terms of social and civil unrest and a lot of protests over the deaths of unarmed Black men.
Okay. Wow. Go ahead, Theo.
No, that's deep. As far as getting into the crime fiction, obviously you talked a little bit about the influences coming from your dad, but what made you really kind of look at that genre and say this is what I want to attack?
Well, I think you could do a lot in crime fiction. Crime fiction doesn't get a lot of respect, I guess, by way of the literary community, right? So you got Walter Mosley, who has written crime fiction, but he's written everything. But he's coming up early in his career. Once he started winning awards, people would say, well, he's just a crime writer, or, he's just writing mysteries. But you could do so much with mysteries because you could tap into social issues. You can tap into politics, all surrounding a crime, because you can feed a lot of information and a lot of important context and really different ideas if you kind of write it around a mystery, because everybody loves mysteries. So it's a great way to open people's eyes to a world that they may not have been familiar with, while you still kind of have them on the hook, because if it's a who done it, they want to know who done it, who did it in the end, right? So you can have them on the hook in terms of the plot. So it's entertaining, but as they say, you can kind of feed the medicine in with people not necessarily realizing it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're incorporating a little bit of social justice acknowledgement into this latest project. Is that kind of something that's important to you that you try to weave into your works?
Very much so. I think, writing this novel, it took me a little while to get started. So I left the police academy in 2014, and I really started this in about 2016. And so for me, if I was going to tell the story, because for a long time I didn't want to write a cop story, but for me, I said, okay, well, I have this unique experience. I can tell this story in a different way that maybe people haven't come across. And so, I had to acknowledge what was going on. And I think, that's a big theme in the book, because when I was in the academy, nobody wanted to talk about this stuff. I used to get disciplined all the time because I would ask questions about, well, what do you do in this situation? Or I would bring up what happened to Eric Gardner and ask, what was the real policy there? And nobody wanted to talk about that. They considered that to be politics. But that could have been a teachable moment. We could have been learning how to be better police officers. But For this book, I wanted to capture that environment because I think that environment is toxic and is part of the reason we got a lot of problems today.
I agree. I agree. How's that been received? Obviously, that's probably a little bit of a different angle. You being, African American author and tackling those type of issues and being in the genre that you're in. Kind of how's that mixture been received so far?
Good question. So, the crime fiction community is interesting because it skews a little bit conservative and a little bit older. There's not too many millennials writing crime fiction. Not too many millennials, especially of color and especially not Black men, writing crime fiction. So it's oftentimes I'm the only brother in the room, when it comes to conferences and things like that. Because for a long time crime fiction has kind of helped sell this idea of the mythological cop, this kind of do-gooder, who everyone roots for, even if he beats up a suspect, somehow he's right, and people who like that stuff, I will say, probably had a hard time with my book. The people who were looking for something refreshing and something that actually speaks to what's going on now, appreciated the book. As a writer, you can't, and I would never try, but you can't please everybody. And for this book, I just put it all on the table because it's the truth, as far as my experience, and a lot of the characters are inspired by police officers, Black police officers that I grew up with. So, it speaks about our community and how we view policing in our community, and some of the issues in terms of identity that Black officers can often experience, issues, regarding whether you fit into the community or whether you are considered an enemy of the community. And so that's what, and not everybody's going to get that. You know what I mean? Like I write, obviously I want everyone to enjoy the book, but first and foremost, I write for, my audience, which is Black folks. I'm writing, essentially this book is a love letter to Black law enforcement because I know oftentimes a lot of Black folks who wear the badge don't get a lot of respect. So, this is an examination of some of the trials and tribulations that they go through.
Gotcha. Definitely sounds like you might be treading on some political waters there. So how do you kind of figure out where that line is? Obviously you say you don't want to try to please everybody, but how do you find that line of trying to get to your personal truth that you want to get out and your message versus the realness that you're trying to incorporate?
Yeah, I guess it is striking a balance. I mean, I put the story first, and I think naturally some of the social and political elements come out, oftentimes through character. But as long as I'm staying true to the story, and I think the story is compelling, and it's moving, and it's thrilling, and it has people kind of on the hook and edge of their seat kind of experience, then I know I'm on the right track. I think sometimes in terms of, writing thrillers, you don't want to bog people down and you don't want it to feel preachy, right? And so I think that's the struggle if you're trying to write something that deviates a little bit from what everybody knows or something that's very plot driven. And I think I do that pretty well. I think it's one of those things I think I'm good at, but I think with each book I get better at. And so, consider this my fourth book. Every book I've written has explored the Black experience, and with that, social and political issues.
Gotcha. How much of yourself did you pour into the main character of this book?
I would probably say 40%. I mean, he does some things I would never do. But I think he gets in some trouble. I mean, he does some controversial things, and I think as far as I'm concerned, when I was writing his character, I said, well, what would happen maybe if there was a part of me that just didn't care and was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna join the police department, whatever happens. If I didn't have an element of conscience about me that I had a character who wasn't necessarily overly troubled by what was happening and just saw it as, okay, well, when I kind of rise in the ranks, I'll fix all this. All I have to do is become chief and I'm gonna fix all this. But right now I'm gonna ignore it, and that's kind of how his character is. So which is how I can never function, but I think if anything, where we may be similar, is just kind of his backstory. And so his backstory, he started as a visual artist, never really wanted to be a police officer. And then there's some trauma that happens and kind of puts him on the path of becoming a police officer. And then some of the other characters, and they're kind of inspired by officers and people in my family, who serve. And so some of it is pulled from conversations that we had, growing up, especially around Rodney King, that was happening, and just kind of trying to capture that kind of environment. Because the truth is, the police officers talk about this stuff all the time, race, politics, all that stuff. Media don't want you to know that, but behind closed doors, there's a lot of conversations about it,
Yeah.
And so they're very aware. It's not just like they in the dark where they're trying to figure out why people are upset. No, they know why people are upset. They know. So those are conversations that I was privy to kind of growing up.
Gotcha. Just take us away from the book for a quick second. More about you, LAPD. In my mind, I'm thinking LAPD, NYPD. Not that I want to go the law enforcement route, but those are probably two I would stay away from personally. What made you kind of want to go down that path and take that challenge?
Well, for me, I mean, I have family who are with the LAPD, and so the way that kind of works is, if your legacy, it's I won't say it's easier to get on, but it's a little bit different experience, because they kind of know your family a little bit. So they say, okay, well, because the truth is they don't it's hard for Black people to get in there anyway. And within my class, I was the only Black male. We had one other Black female. That was it, out of a class of, I believe it was about 30 of us. So the demographics in the class don't even reflect the city. So they're not really interested in you being there to start with. And so, for me, I guess where I may even be similar to Trevor Finnegan is that I went in believing that I could have an impact on my community. And so, that was my focus. And so one thing I can say about the department, though, is that there's tons of jobs in there. And because I had the writing background, had the communication background, and the filmmaking background, they were already saying, well, once you do your 2 years, they'll move you to the chief's office, or, you can work in the communications, or you can work on some of these other community initiatives they had going where they're trying to work on community policing. So I saw it as an opportunity where, okay, maybe I can use my skills that I have to really help my community and have an impact. Once I got in there, I saw the machine was very big. And in order to do that, you're going to have to jump so many hurdles because the spirit of the place wasn't right. So at least when I was there, hopefully maybe there's been some changes, but it wasn't right because it was at a time where they were very defensive. It was at a time where they had this great fear of people capturing their stuff on video and beware of anybody with a camera. Instead of saying you should be doing your job right, it was someone's always watching. So make sure you don't get caught doing anything. But not that you should do your job and then you have nothing to worry about. So the spirit wasn't right. So, that's and once I saw that, that's when I really was like, this wasn't what I had hoped, because they sell it as they're all about reform. They sell it as we're making changes. So when you're going through the application process, it's a whole different thing, because it's like, we want people like you because, we need to diversify and all this stuff. Once you get in there, you realize it's the same old stuff. The academy anyway hadn't changed. The academy had been doing most of the same training since the 80s. And we all know what the 80s looked like, especially in LA. So, not a whole lot had changed. It was a lot of smoke and mirrors, truthfully, because once you got in there, it wasn't inclusive, and it wasn't diverse, and it wasn't trying to be equitable and show how to deal with the community in a better way. So, I mean, I think that was my hope, and then I saw things
Mhm.
that kind of let me know that, oh, that ain't gonna happen, or if it is gonna happen, you're gonna give 25 years of your life to try and make it happen, and it might not be
Ooh,
worth it.
Yeah,
that's
So
that's a
true.
hard. That's a hard. It's a lot of nepotism in politics and in business.
Mm.
And when I say politics, I'm referring to government, and definitely we've kind of put our police forces into that government side more so than the humanitarian side a lot of times. So I definitely can see that perspective. You personally, let me ask you this, and we're not gonna get too political with it. I'm sure as a man of color, coming from that background, you probably get lumped into that whole defund the police conversation. Kind of how do people approach you with that, or what kind of expectations do they have of you when that conversation comes up?
Well, it's that's tricky. So oftentimes, people will say, they'll be a little passive about the approach, and they'll say, what do you think is
Mhm.
about what's going on in terms of defund the police? And I say, well, that's only part of the issue. You know, I mean, and then also, the idea of defund, the branding on it, I think probably turns some people off. Like I
Mhm,
agree with reallocation of funds for sure,
mhm,
but it's twofold. So right now, at least when I went into the LAPD, they hadn't had a raise in 10 years, and so morale was very low. Nobody really wanted to join then, and that was 2014. And so, but the downside to that is because they're not paying a lot, you're not getting people who have a whole lot of critical thinking skills. You got a lot of people who
mhm,
just said, "Hey, I want to do this," and they sign up, but they don't come with. And I think part of it too is that they should require at least a certain number, and they kind of do, but they should require just to go ahead and say we need the 4 year degree in something
Yeah.
to show that you have at least matriculated to the point where you have received some kind of your worldview might be a little bit different because you've been exposed to different things through school. And I think in other departments had that. But, for whatever reason, LAPD didn't. And so I think it's part of, I mean, defunding, I would say, yes, reallocation to social programs is 50% of the issue. And then the other 50% would be a mixture of increasing pay to make sure you get better people who want to serve.
mhm,
And then another part of that would be the training, what's going on in the academy. Change the way that you're training your police because all that starts in training. Because I saw it myself. I was in there with recruits who they couldn't wait to shoot people. I mean, we used to
wow,
run. There used to be these scenarios called shoot or don't shoot, and they would basically throw you in a situation and say, okay, here's the situation. You got a situation over here with this guy, and he's a aggressive handler, and he's swinging a bat at people. Um, and
Okay.
it would be something like that. And they would say, okay, what do you do? And they just throw you into it. And so if it was in policy, you had recruits who legit had read that policy about the shooting policy and could say in certain instances, well, I could shoot him. Instead of saying I would talk this person down, I'd have a conversation. It was about two recruits who said, you know what, I don't got time for that. I'll shoot him. Just
mm,
very nonchalantly, like it was nothing. And so, if you have people like that, and that's the thing, people knew these people were like that, but they didn't, nothing ever came of it. No one ever pressed them on why they would do that. No one ever said, well, you think it's another way to handle that? Nobody ever said that. It was kind of like, well, and that's the thing, they teach you. If you can rationalize it, you can get away with it. So if you could say,
wow,
well, I rationalized because I was afraid for my life. The bat,
Mm.
he's swinging a bat. What if it hit me in the head? I was scared, so I pulled my firearm instead of going for something non-lethal. So, that's the issues. And another part of it too is that they need to change it so that police actually can be, sued civilly, that they no longer have the kind of the departmental protections, and they need to make that a major change because a lot of them you're protected by the department, so they do a lot of things, wild things that they would never ever do, but they do it because they're wearing that badge.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's a hard road to come to,
Yeah.
especially when you're gonna need the federal government to kind of step in to make that portion happen. And unfortunately, my thing with defunding the police is nobody wants the police really to go away. People just want a better way of things being done. And me personally, I kind of echo what you said. I believe a lot more should go to training and pay than making some of these local communities look like militias and buying tanks. So if you can buy that, you can pay somebody that can do a better job. So some reallocation, I think, at some point would only be, it would benefit everybody in those communities. So definitely, I hear you on that one, brother.
But can you shout back out your book and tell everybody where they could get it from? And also, if you got, are you doing any touring, book tours?
Yes. So the book is Under Color of Law. It's available through Amazon, and it's published by Thomas & Mercer, which is the Amazon mystery and crime imprint. Right now, it's actually on sale. So it's instead of $14, it's $11. And I am currently on, I've been kind of book touring throughout the year. The next event that we have is with Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore. It's out of San Diego, but the event is actually virtual, and I'll be talking with another author, buddy of mine, about Under Color of Law and just kind of writing and the practice of writing in general.
And you can check that out. Shout out your social medias?
Yes. So you can find me at my website is aaronphilipclark.com, and then you can find me on Twitter at @_write me a world, and then also I'm on Facebook. All you have to do is search Aaron Philip Clark.
Awesome. Theo, you ready to go into our fun fact game?
I do have one more quick question for him. Because we always like people who reach back. For those inspiring artists that are out there, have ideas in their head, maybe put some on notebook paper. What do you what's the best tip that you can give them while they're starting their journey?
The best tip I would say is start and finish. So a lot of times when it comes to writing, and I teach writing, and one of the hardest things for my students is getting started. That's really, but once they get started, then over time, sometimes they lose steam. And I say, if you start it, just finish it. It doesn't have to be the best novel, doesn't have to be the best short story, but at least get to the end. And so I teach an accelerated course where I really teach my students how to write a novel in 30 days, because it is possible. And so I just try and get them to start and finish. Worry about the rest later, but at least be able to type the end.
Amen.
Appreciate those jewels.
Yes, it is. You want to go first, or you want me to go?
I'll go first. So let's take it to the book thing. So your character, let's pretend like he's in real life. He's on the job. He gets into a situation in a dark alley where there's a bad guy, there's a police officer. They each somehow take each other out over this tremendous bag that's sitting there with a ridiculous amount of money. What's your character gonna do in that situation?
And that's just where he would turn it in.
Okay. So he's a good guy. Yeah. Okay. So let me answer it a little bit differently. You're still on the force. What are you doing if nobody's watching?
I'm turning it in.
Okay.
You ain't gonna get him to change his answer, Theo. Don't be trying that. He's the good guy.
I got you. Be a good guy. We need more of those.
Now, my question is, if you can interview anyone, dead or alive, who would you interview and what question would you ask them?
I would probably want to interview Oscar Micheaux. So he was one of the first Black filmmakers. And I would just, considering he was making films in the 1920s, as a Black man, it was doing independently. completely independently. I would just like to talk to him and just get a sense of what was it in him that made him feel like, you know what, despite how hard this is going to be, I'm just going to do it. And be able to go and get financing. He actually got financing from one of the only Black banks in North Carolina, and he was able to make his movies. And so I would just, I think it'd be interesting to chat with him.
Okay.
That's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep.
All right. Well,
So
it definitely was. I'm sorry.
Now, I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say one more time, real quick. Shout out to social media so people know where to find you, and tell them where to go get the book again.
Sure. So you can find me at my website. So it's aaronphillipclark.com. And then you can also find me on Facebook, Aaron Phillip Clark. You could search that. And then also on Twitter and Instagram at _WriteMeAWorld. And you can find the novel Under Color of Law at Amazon.com.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to say thanks for interviewing with us today. It was a pleasure to get to know you and know about your book. And I'm a bookworm, so I definitely want to get a signed copy if I can. And congratulations,
Sure.
we look forward to
Congrats.
what you got going on for 2022. And Theo, you had any more you wanted to add to it?
No, definitely. Thank you for coming on. We definitely wish you much success with the book and all your other endeavors, and definitely want people to go out and support that. And thank you, Aaron. Aaron is a good guy. He's gonna turn the money in. I'm mostly a good guy. I'm gonna turn the money in, but it might be a little bit light. So it's all the way good guys still out there in the world. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right.
All
Be
right.
blessed.
You have a good one. Happy
All right, you
Wednesday.
too.
Be blessed. Be safe.
All right. Thank you.
All right.